Okay, I just thought I'd shoot a quick video here on using moxy for a warm-up. There's a few different ways, but the philosophy is kind of the same with all of them. So I'll start with kind of the simplest one. And basically I just did an easy warm-up, and then I did some 4-1-4 steps here just to fiddle around to get up to about an hour. Anyway, so basically what I'm doing when I warm up is I start really easy, so you can see my average heart rate. For the first bunch of minutes here, 7 or so, 8 minutes is like 82. So I'm basically doing a heart rate step test. There's a couple little fiddles in here with me getting ready to go, but so what I've graphed here is this is muscle oxygen saturation here in percent, and then this is power to heart rate ratio, which I think you'll find interesting once I show you a few things. Purple line here is power, and heart rate is red. So what I did was I started riding really easy, just like a heart rate step test. And as I always like to kind of say, I gradually increase the heart rate over time, and I just let the power kind of come into the legs. So what I'm doing is I'm riding approximately 100 beats a minute here, and then I'm just kind of watching the SMO2 rise. And then once it plateaus for a moment, I go a little harder. And I'm just patient. So I just add 5-10 beats, and I give it some time, and it should come up. So it'll either stay flat or it'll come up again. And I just keep doing that. And if you go, you'll notice I just went 5 beats and 5 beats. And eventually you'll see this kind of ceiling here. So I kept going just for fun so that you could see that there's a point where I have a peak SMO2 here, and then it starts to decline. And we'll get into this stuff over here in a moment. So what I do is heart rate step test, which I think is, there's more to the heart rate step test than I think we have some ideas on, just because we haven't heard it anywhere from, except for Crazy Me. So if I take the power to heart rate and you look at it, you know how I always kind of say, okay, well, this is recovery until it starts to plateau. And then as soon as it starts to plateau, this is probably the bottom of my endurance for today. So we could say that, probably right around 116 beats, 170 watts, I'm in a nice stable position. And then we could even argue and say, okay, let's go over here a bit until we see it start to change, and it gets a little funky here around 120 beats, 180 watts. And my power to heart rate starts to change. So we see increase in power to heart rate, but declining SMO2. So if I were to take lactates, you would have seen lactate LT1 probably would have been right around here at 180-ish watts today. And we would have seen a little bit more lactate over here than over here. So if you do a real easy heart rate step test, it's an easy way to get to the highest SMO2, and what you're doing is being patient. Add a little heart rate, let the SMO2 rise, let the power come into the legs. I'll come back to this here in a sec. So then, forgive me, I always have problems with this. One day I'll figure it out. Maybe it won't let me. Okay, so here's just a few other examples. So this is just someone I work with, and they also have a moxy. They just had it. They've only had it for like a week, so let's call this they're just starting to practice warming up. So if you look at, once again, they bring their heart rate up nice and gradual, and here at least the SMO2 remains flat for the most part. While the power gradually comes into the legs. We'll talk about doing intensity and warm-up in a separate little blurb. So gradual warm-up of the heart rate and stable SMO2. If we look at a few days prior, so it's a similar workout, but the warm-up, and I let them do this on purpose, and I want them to experience the difference. So if you notice here, this is an erg mode warm-up. So in erg mode, you can see heart rate's flat for a bit, and then it starts to climb. And, SMO2 thinks about rising, you know, it does rise for the first stage, but then it's just this constant decline. So this is one reason why I don't like erg mode. It doesn't let the power come into your legs. So there's a few things. This isn't long enough. You'll notice my warm up here was, you know, for me to get to my peak SMO2, it took like 32 minutes. So we've got a few different examples. Someone not using erg mode, letting the power come into their legs by starting easy and ramping up heart rate, and at least the SMO2 is stable, not declining. Then you've got the erg mode example where SMO2 declines, and then there's sort of my example here where this is all heart rate based, and I'm using heart rate in combo of looking at my SMO2 and just being patient and letting it come up. So you'll notice here that when I stop, it goes higher, and then then I ride at 215 watts, so roughly the same here. And so then I stop again, and it goes a little higher, and then I ride at 230, and then I stop, and then it goes a little higher. And each time I do a stop, I have an increase in working SMO2 by a little bit. Because remember, I'm going harder here. This is like 180 watts. This is 230 watts, and I have arguably the same or slightly less SMO2. So there's a combination of going really easy by heart rate and letting the power come into the legs to see your peak SMO2. If I was going to do an endurance ride today, then I could do this warm up to find my level for today. So I'd warm up, see this thing, see it start to decline. Okay, fine. I'm going to, at this point, I would probably do some harder efforts, maybe, you know, 4 or 5 30-30s, and I would stop in between the efforts. And I'll give you an example of this another day, but I would stop in between those efforts. I would only do a few to see if I can get SMO2 to budge like this. But you'll notice when I stop and go again, I don't really increase that much my SMO2. So I'd have to go harder to see if I can get a better response to see if I can increase working SMO2. So I'll give you an example of that another day. So this is you know, one of the ways to use the Moxy for a warm-up. Sadly, what it really does is it really starts to show you how long you need to warm up and how easy you need to warm up. So if you've got an hour to work out, this is probably not going to work. But if you can find some time and warm up easier, you know, and if you have a Moxy, then you can sort of see what your warm-up duration is to max SMO2. Anyway, thanks. Talk to you soon.